Good evening, everyone. We hope you're all doing well. We are two of the characters, the two you have most likely never heard of.
I am Dr. Bruenn. I was the cardiologist for Franklin Delano Roosevelt during the last year of his life.
And I am Daisy Suckley, an old friend of the Roosevelts and founder of FDR's Presidential Library, the first of its kind.
As an archivist and a doctor, you will not be surprised that we care for the truth.
But when it comes to performing a historical play, liberties have to be taken.
But seeing as how this story is mostly based on our own writing, we don't want to use that as an excuse.
So, a quick history lesson to save us from having to give a lot of exposition later.
It is March 1945. The Western Allies have crossed the Rhine.
But Soviet forces are closer to Berlin.
And down here is Yugoslavia, where things are confused.
On the one side, you have Yugoslav partisans under Marshal Broz Tito and a mostly Serbian group called the Chetniks, who are fighting for their exiled King Peter. Where is he exiled to again, Doctor?
Cambridge, England.
Oh, that must be nice. I've never been, but I hear their libraries are world-renowned.
On the other side are the Nazis. The Ustaše puppet state in Croatia and some Chetniks who really dislike communism. More so than Nazism.
Complicated.
Just like the Roosevelt family in the United States. First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt is in Washington, D.C. meeting with politicians and activists for civil rights.
Meanwhile, Franklin is recovering from his trip to the Crimea, where he met with Prime Minister Churchill and Marshal Stalin to decide the fate of a world at peace.
Franklin has chosen to rest in one of his favorite spots away from the White House, in Warm Springs, Georgia. His little White House.
Daisy, you'd warm this. Oh, Dutchman, up if you can pass me my cigarette and my...
Stop it, P. I thought you were pretending to be a baby.
When did I say that?
When you suggested I feed you this way?
You and Dr. Bruenn have instructed that I live a life as dull as possible, and not lifting my arms so it counterbalances having to worry about Hitler and Toto. And Uncle Joe and Winston and de Gaulle and Cash My Check and Ivan Saud and Emperor, etc.
I think it's anything but dull to be fed this way.
You may be right. Even Ivan Saud could feed himself, even if he did need a specialist slave to carry his coffee.
Be honest, Franklin. Was it better than this gruel?
Oh, it was god-awful, Daisy. Never assume that splendor ensures good taste. Your group is far superior.
I think the green mayonnaise at the White House has taught enough people that.
That's one bit of advice that I can be thankful to Bruenn for, cutting that cooking from my diet. Well, now I'm all related again. Wouldn't it be weird if this gruel should be the one thing to put weight on me?
Well, Dr. Bruenn says your weight is much improved, and your heartbeat is more regular now.
Well, that may just be that I haven't had to be running my sorry self to Crimea.
I think the gruel is helping too. It makes you sleep soundly.
I think it's more the side of that 3-cent stamp.
April 25, 1945, toward the United Nations.
April 25. Official. No longer some term we throw around as allies, but a proper organization of peace.
You've been saying it so long, it feels it should be more than a name.
Did I tell you how Winston and I agreed on the name?
I don't believe so, Pete.
Well, Winston wanted to revive the League of Nations, but I told him there was too much prejudice against the League. It failed here. It failed everywhere. So we agreed to go away and think about it. Then that night, it came to me. The United Nations. So I got up and went straight to his room alone. I knocked, but no answer. So I went in and saw him there in the bathroom door. A pink cherub. Not a stitch on, except from the towel drying.
What did he say?
I didn't give him a chance to. I just pointed and exploded. The United Nations! He just said, okay, and then commented on his lack of simple attire.
A pink cherub. Oh, why are all the world leaders I've met such babies? Yeah, I'm surprised he was able to conduct business without his suit on. Will Winston be at the United Nations opening?
Well, hopefully. And hopefully with more than his birthday suit. It's mainly for foreign ministers, so there'll be Statness and Eden and a representative from every free nation from Argentina to Yugoslavia.
As long as they've declared war on Germany already.
Well, we have to have some standards.
So, will Stalin be sending his foreign secretary to represent the Russians?
It's still a maybe on Molotov. Uncle Joe's holding that card back for now, and he's just sending the ambassador.
That is something, Franklin. At least they're there.
Wow, me sailing, flying, and driving to Crimea is one thing. Not just putting some minor minister on a plane from New York to San Francisco.
Will you go?
Wow, we'll all go. Even follow. This is a world organization, so there should at least be a canine representative.
I think I'd rather not hear the national anthem for this new homeland for dogs. Will Eleanor be attending this time? I know she was so disappointed not to be with you at Yalta.
I'll have to book an appointment now. You know, Daisy, I think Eleanor and I might be able to get together again. Do some things together, take some trips maybe. I only wish she wasn't so darn busy. I could have her with me much more if she didn't have so many other engagements.
Who is she seeing in Washington now?
It'd be easier to say who she wasn't seeing. I gave up some time ago trying to remember her diary. Maybe she's heard something from the Red Cross or the NAACP or some other idealistic group, but I need space for remembering where our lines are on the Western.
Not the general's job? Why do you have to trouble yourself with such matters, Franklin?
Trust me, Daisy, it's easier this way. Winston will telephone me about his views on dispersing troops to Italy or some Balkan backwater. Ike and the top brass have their plans, so they keep me up to date with their progress. And then I relay all that information back to Winston, instead of going back and forth like some switchboard girl.
Are they still saying it's just one more month to go?
In Europe, yes. And then Japan.
Well, at least we're on the home stretch now. Your thoughts can return here.
Well, I hope so, Daisy, but not until this peace organization is up and running.
Well, at least we can put a date on that now. April 25, official. Is the stamp for use or for the collection?
Well, for the collection. I can have one to the coffins tomorrow.
Will there be space for them in the library's collection?
Well, there must be hundreds of books in here. Where are a few little stamps going to be?
How long would you like to dedicate to sorting them out tomorrow?
I could help you out for a few hours. It'd be good to finish on the 34 papers.
Well, if you go through that year, I'm sure you can get through its paperwork.
I hope so, Daisy. Lucy says she's arriving in the afternoon. I think it'd be a great chance to take a country drive.
I thought Lucy would arrive tomorrow.
Lucy's got this portrait artist, Madame Slavic, that wants to sit down with me for a few hours.
Madame Elizabeth Shoumatoff, you're looking for me. She did your portrait last August.
Oh, yes. I can't say that I cared for it, but if it's to Lucy's tastes, I won't deprive her.
What have you told her about San Francisco?
Secret Service still aren't sure of whether they can get her in without being seen.
Even from just one set of eyes?
They say that keeping two middle-aged women apart is not something they can rehearse for, especially with so many foreign delegates.
Well, Lucy can't see you in San Fran. She'll better see you looking well in your new portrait.
Yes, yes. Dull rest.
Sleep well. Well, this record is great for everything, P. Getting you to sleep, speeding you through work. You ever tire of it?
You never tire of those songs from your youth, can you, Daisy? Don't you recall yours?
Believe it or not, I can't.
I guess I tied this song up with some image that I wanted to have then. Being a great explorer like President Roosevelt I, in the wilderness with nothing but a gun for protection and a cactus to quench your thirst.
Well, bet you're glad to be well hydrated now. I think that's all of them, Franklin. Finished quite early today.
These coffins fill up quickly. Do we have enough for a library at Daisy?
Well, you need at least 5 bookcases to make a library, Franklin, so passed that milestone some time ago.
Well, thanks to you. I've set some time aside for tomorrow, and Lucy says she's arriving in the afternoon. I've set some time aside for the 35 and 36 papers.
Things seem to go well with President Osmania today.
Dr. Bruenn has advised that I cut down on my hours this week. But yes.
There's no rush, Franklin. Dr. Bruenn said he wanted to see you this evening. Shall I go again?
Yes, okay, Daisy. Send in the demanding doctor. How can I help you today, Doctor?
Good evening, Mr. President. I just want to take your blood pressure today.
Is that it? You can, but... Daisy, can you help me get my arm free?
Thank you, Mr. President.
So, what reading would you like today, Doctor?
It's not a question of what I like to see. I have to work with what the reading gives me.
I can appreciate that, Howard, but surely you must have some objective before starting out.
I'll go get that.
Thank you, Daisy. Well, take my meeting with President Osmania this morning, Howard. He came in wanting to assure me that the Philippines would remain strong allies, and I wanted to show him that I was committed to that independence. Even if the Senate doesn't like it, it would be my objective.
Yes, Mr. President.
He wanted me to assure him that the American Empire was leaving the Philippines. I thought this was a good idea. The Philippines have been part of the Japanese Empire for years, and it had done nothing to help the people there, nor for the people in Japan.
Yes, Mr. President.
President Osmania told me about how he received this letter from a boy of 9 years, who said that he didn't want anything Japanese to eat, and only wanted more American candy.
Yes, Mr.
Well, I told him that whilst the American Empire is leaving the Philippines, it's good to know that the Hershey's Chocolate Empire of Pennsylvania will remain there.
Yes, Mr. President. And was President Osmania sure that you could speed up independence for them?
I have to assure myself first, Howard. It's the Senate that I have to convince now. It just makes no darn sense to delay the inevitable. The poor people of the Philippines must have little patience for imperial boots by now, even if they are well-meaning like ours. How is the reading, Howard?
190 over 110, Mr. President.
And are you happy with that, Howard?
It is an improvement on earlier this week. You do seem to be on the right track as long as you keep to your schedule. No more than 6 cigarettes a day. Keep eating more and sleep by 10 p.m.
And bring this war to a close by the end of summer. I'll try to keep to the timetable, Howard.
Franklin, Eleanor's on the phone.
What did she say she wanted, Daisy?
She wants to talk to you about how young Johnny is recovering and that there is a pressing matter that's been brought to her attention by some of her contacts in Washington.
Every DC matter is pressing, Daisy. Did she say who it was?
She mentioned some names with the International Red Cross, as well as some young Eastern Europeans she's been talking to called Gavin Mitch.
I'll be through in a moment.
Please don't let the call make you late for dinner, Mr. President.
I'm on Eleanor's timetable now, Doctor. Besides, it's probably one of the few chances I'll get to ask her directly about San Francisco.
We'll be out here waiting till you're done, Dean.
Thank you, Daisy. Oh, and tell Chef Bonner not to hold back on that Captain Country chicken this time. Hello, Daisy. Eleanor, sorry.
Think you're getting your old age there, Franklin. Good to hear ya. Things are starting to brighten up. I was just telling Daisy that Anna has sent word Johnny is getting better.
No more sign of the infection?
No. Anna said they weren't taking any chances, so she and Clarence will be staying in Bethesda for a little while longer.
Who's Johnny again, Miss Suckley?
Their grandson, John Roosevelt, Anna's son.
Thank you. It's just hard to keep track of all these Roosevelts. I never know if it's one from his side or on hers.
They're usually pretty easy to tell apart. Eleanor's family are Republicans. His are Democrats. Although she, of course, is the exception.
It's not usually the first question I ask, Suckley, but how old is John?
He's 6.
Oh, poor thing. They don't have much luck with their health, the Roosevelts.
Well, as far as I know, Eleanor is rarely ill. When she is, it's not something that's clear to the world. She has this remarkable ability to never seem exhausted when she must be tired.
If she can prescribe anything for that, I'd be happy to pass on the advice of Bethesda.
She'd probably just say garlic pills. I think it's something a little deeper. Now, when you're finished with that, Doctor, would you be able to give me a hand with these coffins?
I can do so now, Miss Suckley, but won't the President be annoyed that we're starting without him being present?
Can you keep a secret, Doctor?
I should be able to, yeah.
He underestimates his task. I've quietly done most of it without him. However, assistance is always appreciated.
Of course, Miss Suckley.
So, when will you be setting off to San Francisco?
Dr. Bruenn's advised that I take the train, so I think the 17th or 18th.
I may have to join you there on the 23rd. I have a few engagements that I can't move.
That will be on the Monday. Can you not come any earlier? I was hoping your Sunday broadcast could be from San Fran in the run-up to the UN. Eleanor, we need all the publicity we can get if we're going to win the American people over to this thing.
I will see if my producer at NBC thinks it possible first.
Well, I'm sure there'll be some radio station out west that'll be willing to offer you their facilities. At the very least, the extra days will give you more material for your column.
You put a lot of faith in my publicity, Franklin. Have you not seen the articles that say I believe we, the Americans, have no obligation to save the Europeans from starving?
Eleanor, who believes such rumors?
I'm not sure. Can we commission a Gallup poll first?
I'm sure you can trust the American public on that question. You've been saying the exact opposite for 5 years, heck, maybe even 10 years now.
I know, and it's a slanderous lie. Now, Franklin, this does lead me onto something that I wanted to discuss with you. I met these 2 young Yugoslavians last week in Washington. They were requesting final supplies ahead of their push against the fascists occupying their West.
Which Yugoslavians?
How do you mean, dear?
Were they with the embassy?
I'm not sure, but they were relaying messages from the partisans.
Partisans? Marshal Tito's own. Well, Eleanor, their front lines are in the Dalmatian mountains. They don't have a reliable port in the Adriatic to make a difference.
Well, there must be airfields in the region to serve those needs.
Dr. Bruenn, I wanted to bring a matter to your attention. My bedroom is next to the President's, and around 5 a.m. I was woken by a strong coughing spell coming from his room. Is that a concern?
That shouldn't be something to worry about, Miss Suckley. It's just a clear and accumulated mucus that gathers around in the early hours. I must thank you for helping keep the President fed before his sleep. Surgeon General McIntyre and I were fearing it was becoming a bit too thin.
It's the easiest thing I can do for him. It's the one time of day he can turn aside from all his world problems and just behave like a complete nut. Just give somebody else the chance to laugh with him, at him, both. So, the president's condition is improving.
Well, the readings are not worse, but I can ignore that strange new color in his face. Even some of his stuff that pointed it out to me and asked if it's a concern.
So long now. I've been trying to make myself think he looks well. He doesn't. He looks 10 years older than he did last year. He knows it himself, even if he refuses to say it. But then he does seem more rejuvenated since we've been here.
Yeah, well, but he won't be staying here for the 2 or 3 months he needs. He won't even stay till the end of this month with this San Francisco trip.
It's true. He's following your instructions, leading the dull life he needs to get his strength back. He keeps using up his pep as soon as he starts to feel better, and then we have to start all over again. It's next to impossible to get him to stop at the exact moment between his having a happy, interesting time and getting overtired.
Yeah, well, it's not the tiredness I'm worried about, Miss Suckley, but the risk of strain or shock.
Well, his schedule will soon not have to concern itself with movements in Europe or the Pacific. He's already looking past that now to the UN, matters of peace.
You weren't with us in Quebec last year, Miss Suckley, when the President met with Prime Minister Churchill.
Are you just showing off that he's taken you on further travels than one of his oldest friends?
No, sorry. It's just something I saw then that gave me pause. Have you, seen that motion picture of Wilson by any chance?
The one about President Woodrow? I did not see it, no.
Save you having to, and you'll thank me. Sent off the stuff this week. But, when I took the President blood pressure that night, it was 240 over 130. 50 points higher than before the film started.
My goodness. That could have... Just from watching the picture?
I'm afraid so. Must have risen toward the end of the film. The Versailles Peace Conference is over. President Wilson is on a railway tour of the country, trying to get public support for his League of Nations, ahead of the Senate vote to ratify the treaty.
Am I right in remembering that this was when President Wilson had his stroke?
It was indeed, but I'm not sure that's what disturbed President Roosevelt. I heard him as he watched President Wilson concede that his United States wouldn't participate in his League of Nations.
What did Franklin say?
He said, by God, it's not going to happen to me.
There is a real risk when we rely on airdrops, Eleanor. It's incredibly difficult in that part of the world. Did you hear what happened to the Dakota flight of Red Cross nurses? The one that crashed into the Dalmatian mountains in 43?
It's not one I'm familiar with.
Well, thankfully, they were collected by some British secret operatives out there. They were too far from the front line to be of any use, so they headed through the mountains towards the coast. If I remember rightly, they had to travel 50 miles in high heels.
Franklin, that was in 1943. My Association Red Cross uniform comes with sensible shoes. And besides, the Yugoslav partisans have already liberated back a lot of their country from the Nazis and their Ustash puppets.
Well, they've gained some ground, but even with Soviet forces behind them, they've ended up getting pushed back. You recall Warsaw. With an unpredictable front, we may end up gifting guns to the Germans and plunging the place into further ruin.
Franklin, this isn't Poland. All the allies are backing the same freedom fighters, Tito and his partisans.
If Tito and King Peter work together to send a Yugoslav delegate to the UN, I agree they're an allied nation of ours. If you wish to see that, then you should know our plans for heading west.
For the end of April? Let me just ready my diary.
We'll leave here on the 18th and join you in Washington before training west to the Golden Gate. We'll have some time to enjoy the build-up, but once I'm done with my speech, I must leave immediately. It must be so. This peace organization shouldn't get distracted by one man from one nation. You can stay on if you want to see some more of these United Nations.
Did you say by train, Franklin? That'll take days, just like the campaign did last fall.
I think those 6 days on the carriage were the longest we spent together all year.
Now, I will have my weekly press conference on the 19th. Could we wait for that? And I've also invited a Mr. Walter White and a few of the other NAACP leaders for lunch at the White House on the 22nd. Actually, darling, would it be easier for me to just fly out rather than spend so much time on the train?
That's your decision, Eleanor, but I was hoping we could discuss ideas for the United Nations.
I am not a legislator, Franklin. What plans do you expect me to write up? I have a few suggestions that I would like to add to the American delegation, but you said that we can't send any more than 8 of our own people.
This peace organization shouldn't get logy with bureaucracy before it's even begun. If we prepare for future events in too much detail, we may end up letting ourselves in for trouble. The UN president shouldn't have to worry about the same number of pages that I've been handed lately. The best we can do for now is simplify them.
And I get that, but even if that is just so, what do you expect me to get done on the train? My NBC show from a California studio? What will we get done on the train? Well,
I'm sure there'll be more like-minded souls than a Yugoslav or two. You may run into some corners of the world that I'm ignorant of.
that's all well and good. But do you really think we'll need days of train travel to prepare for this? You haven't got any paperwork from the likes of the representatives coming from Uruguay and New Zealand, have you?
Well, Harry or Stathnos or someone might be able to bring you some dossiers, but honestly, Eleanor, this won't be the same paper-pushing United Nations. It won't have some marble palace in Geneva like the League did.
Now, frankly, I'm not sure you can blame Swiss bureaucrats for Wilson's failure in the Senate.
We need to give the impression that this peace organization belongs to the world, not the empires who ran it. As long as it has a good telephone connection and working airfields, the United Nations could meet there. It could be in Hawaii or even Azores. Remember when we stopped over in 1919? The harbor at Porto was magnificent, and the plant life. Anything could grow there. English oak, white pine, bamboo. Maybe now the future peace of the world.
Somewhat, darling. But I think all my thoughts were on the Versailles Conference.
Paris! We should have gone as soon as the Germans have been pushed back. What was the name of that hotel close to the Concord place? We boast of our state being a melting pot, and yet the voices and the colors of the people there. I think it's the closest you and I have got to being in the center of this world.
I only wish I'd known what was behind that rotten palace facade. The tangle of hallways and stairs. Many dark corners. Secret dealings.
What do you mean by that, dear?
What I mean, dear, is First Lady Wilson told me recently about Woodrow's time making the peace. She said she walked in on him and all those other peacemakers of Versailles crawling around on their hands and knees over a vast map of Europe. You know, Edith, she couldn't resist commenting. You all look like a lot of little boys playing a game. She said Woodrow simply looked her in the eyes and said, "Alas, it is the most serious game ever undertaken."
But it will not be the same with these United Nations, Eleanor. I almost hope we can test our new peacekeeping machinery soon by resolving some hostilities between two smaller countries. And show we no longer need a world depending on too many treaties, like in Paris, Bucharest, and so on upon terms.
I hope you're right, dear. And just like the last war, it could become some dispute in the Balkans that infects the rest of the continent.
Yes.
Now, Franklin, I hope you can appreciate the urgency of this matter. The Chetniks and Ustash are still in place helping the Nazis with this stalemate with the partisans. The Yugoslavs have told me that the Chetniks are still getting military supplies from us, the US, even though Winston and Stalin gave up on them in 1943. Why are we still supporting a group that will only deal with the Nazis once it has dealt with the Croats and Muslims?
The Chetniks are fighting 100,000 Ustash. The latest from the front is that they're fighting in the mountains in Croatia or possibly Bosnia. Also, the OSS say that the Chetniks are heroically rescuing our airmen around Belgrade or Sarajevo. Someone in our allies should show them some loyalty.
Is that everything then, Miss Suckley?
Yes, my thanks, Doctor. Can I get you a drink as payment? Miss Bonner made lemonade.
Yes. Yes, please. I got so fixated on those papers that I forgot about the heat. It's nice to know you can have a task to know the big thing.
Trust me, Doctor, it does not always seem so with Roosevelt's paperwork. Now, perhaps your notes will be added to the collection one day. Are you married, Doctor?
Yeah? Yes, I am. 13 years now.
And I joke about not going on these foreign trips, but really, I should be petitioning Franklin to allow Mrs. Bruenn to come so she can support you as you support him.
I think Mrs. Bruenn has enough to keep herself busy with the work and children at Bethesda.
She's in your profession?
As a nurse, yeah.
Perhaps you could have worked as a team with Franklin.
I think we'd both be through that stage where it was enjoyable working with each other.
But is it not difficult to be separated?
The Roosevelts manage.
Oh, I wouldn't call them a typical married couple. They've been used to this arrangement for decades now.
I count my blessing I've not had to be away from my family any more than the average American. At least we've been able to use Bethesda to reunite and still have the war effort.
Dr. Bruenn, can I ask, do you believe you would still be working with Franklin if he wasn't still the president?
Why did such a thought come to you, Miss Suckley?
Well, I mean, you said yourself he's going to need months of rest to recover. Speaking of which, children's hour.
I can't see a scenario where President Roosevelt would ever retire. Last year, one of his advisors, one who's been by his side since the New Deal, I believe, he advised not to run for the fourth term.
Because of his health.
I think it would have been more sympathetic to such an argument, but apparently his advisor said that President Roosevelt should end his career on a high point, not to do what President Wilson did, destroying not only himself, but the public enthusiasm for sound internationalist ideals.
My goodness. Poor Franklin.
Yeah, but his advisor had a point, and we must recognize it, Miss Suckley. If Franklin left with an outstanding record, his ideas may have more influence, as they come from a man who hasn't let his people down.
He's yet to let them down. Did he say why he found his advisor's advice unsound?
I think he found the analysis interesting, but he left out one matter. The matter of his own feelings.
You sat in on many meetings with the president, Doctor?
Not just the meetings, Miss Suckley. When we flew to Crimea, I slept next to his chair on the floor of his cabin to make sure the journey wasn't too adverse for him.
You told me of this, Doctor. I think he felt a little guilty for having you do that. He said when he awoke, he thought you were there to cushion his fall if he fell from his chair in the night.
No, it was necessary. If I could keep his vitals monitored around the clock, I would. His health baffles me, in all honesty. Last year, he completely disregarded his rest regimen, and that yet the campaigning helped, and his appetite and blood pressure improved markedly.
Yes, but I know he can never rely on that brush again. Have you ever studied this photograph, Doctor?
I can say I've never really noticed it, no.
It's from the inauguration in January. That's the whole Roosevelt family. They even had his son James recalled from the Philippines. Such plans hadn't been made the last 3 times when there wasn't a little world war in the way. I think Franklin just always assumed there'd be another opportunity to have that experience. A photograph of the family all together.
Well, for the family's sake, I'm happy he's making these contingency plans. Hopefully retirement will mean it won't be the last time they're all together. For my part, I certainly say I'm looking forward to having a low brewing Thanksgiving once this is all over.
Well, retirement might not be the first thing Franklin wants to do. He might want to move on to another role in the UN, perhaps become its chairman or president.
That's one way to make things easier for yourself. Take on even more people's problems. Maybe that's one way I can convince him away from the stress for the next months. I can tell him, you want to carry out the United Nations plan. Well, without your help, you won't be able to do it. Therefore, just take care of yourself. I mean, look at all this paperwork he's amassed from running one country. Please take no offense against your organizing this, Suckley, but if we doctors handled these many notes, most of our patients would be dead before we could even find and read their medical histories.
Yeah, well, I think he imagines his UN role to be a little smaller than that President of the United States.
He amazed me. I had to press him for years to confess the clear sensation in his chest, perhaps for a decade, but he never sought out a cardiologist. After his father's heart problem, I don't understand how he just felt like he could ignore them.
Well, Franklin told me his father did have one piece of advice for him. He said that patience was key to dealing with an ailing heart.
He told me that too. But if his late father's advice wasn't enough, then what good is mine?
Oh, and Franklin is capable of patience. How do you think his presidency could last 16 years? He's not in a rush to finish it.
Never please.
And please recall notes from the family's health history. His father lived to be 72, his mother 86.
Yeah, when did she pass again? 1941?
Yeah, poor Eleanor. I really shouldn't speak ill of the dead, but I think Eleanor felt she'd finally have Franklin and the rest of the family to herself with her mother-in-law gone. She had that for 2-3 months, then war.
Replace one tyrant with 3.
No, I really shouldn't speak too ill, but really she was hell for ER. Even Franklin admitted his mother went too far with her criticism of poor Eleanor. Then again, Franklin's mother is the reason they're still together now after Franklin's indiscretion after the Great War.
Excuse me, Franklin, dear. I just need to rest my ear for a moment.
Has the White House not provided you with a hearing aid for the other one? I could get McIntyre on it.
No, don't fuss, dear. I can adapt. Lord knows I've seen enough young soldiers who need such equipment, a lot more than I do.
If there's one thing we states do well, it's reply to demand with a reliable production line. There'll be plenty of hearing aids to go around in no time.
Now, Franklin, I think we have ourselves some obligations elsewhere first, such as keeping ourselves some allies in Yugoslavia.
Where is this demand coming from, Eleanor? I told you how the State Department sees things.
Well, for one, I spoke with a Louis Adamich. He's a Slovene author working in D.C. He speaks of a civil war between the Chetniks and the partisans, and he says it's the latter which is gaining ground and support.
So that's one citizen that gives a hoot about what's going on there now. People used to care back in 1941, Eleanor. Now our boys being shot down over there, and it's the Chetniks rescuing them. You or I can't say we don't owe them a favor.
Well, we delivered no favors then, Franklin. Not even our Red Cross could send any help because of your Neutrality Act.
Resources would have been a waste then, and they could be a waste now if we give them to the wrong people. Our arsenal of democracy cannot say yes to every order.
I am not saying we do, but we have an ally in the making with these partisans. Just a moment. Anyway, a contact in the State Department confirmed that yes, the partisans dominate Yugoslav political life. While they don't rely on arms, Tito won't necessarily govern entirely without reference to the desires of the people of Yugoslavia.
Nearby sources have told me that whilst this Tito is no stooge for Stalin, he's enough of a prima donna to want to be the sole ruler of this country. He thinks that free election will only take place under Allied supervision.
Well, all the more reason to get in with them now, dear. One of these Yugoslavs told me about a line that Stalin has. Uncle Joe apparently paints Winston as the kind of man who will pick your pocket for a kopeck. But if people don't watch out for you, dear, you'll dip your hands in it for only bigger quarters.
Uncle Joe thinks he knows me?
Yep.
Well, I've come to know him a lot better, my dear. If I could name only one delegate, it would be a Republican like Vandenberg of Michigan. The Russians need to see that we're not just going to squabble the UN away like we did with the League.
Franklin, you can't charm everyone into being with you.
Great thing to hear from your wife for 40 years.
No, be serious, Franklin. Our daughter told me how unconvinced the Saudi king was by your proposals for the Jews in Palestine.
The king and I agreed that it was just a first meeting. We can do more.
Are you sure you have time?
Well, like I said, the UN could be anywhere. It could be out there, Eleanor. We could move to the Middle East, help them find peace.
Can't you think of anything harder to do?
Well, it will be awfully hard to straighten out Asia, what with India and China and Thailand and Indochina, and I'd like to get into that.
I'm not sure you are tired, dear. You're looking for more work to do.
Well, it will be a lot easier if we find ourselves the right partners. Consider China. They're temporarily weak, but eventually the 450 million Chinese will be united and modernized and the most important factor in the whole Far East.
Is the First Lady the only one that doesn't know about Mrs. Mercer? The household staff told me she was coming to Warm Springs.
I think Eleanor has tried to exorcise the memory of Lucy ever since she found out. You know, Lucy was Eleanor's social secretary.
You say I made such in-depth inquiries.
Yes, I imagine that made the betrayal worse. A love rival who you trusted with your correspondence, running your affairs.
I just don't get how the First Lady could be so unaware.
He's always been careful. At every inauguration, he's had Lucy hidden there somewhere, aided by the Secret Service.
My goodness.
I am sorry to lessen your opinion of the president, Doctor.
Miss Suckley, we realize that, like old people who work with this man, people that know these flows as well, I love him. If he told me to jump out the window, I would do it, without hesitation.
I don't think he would ever ask it of you, Doctor. That being said, if you want to help Franklin's heart, you must be burdened with the knowledge of all the strains that are put upon him.
From the interaction I've seen between the President and Mrs. Mercer, I saw her as nothing but a relief for him.
There's something in their history that must bring Franklin ease. Some memory of Lucy when he was young, striving, and fit again. But Lucy is more than that. She's sweet. On their last country drive, when the day got chilly, she put her sweater over his knees. I can just imagine how she took care of her late husband. She thinks of little things that just make so much difference to a semi-invalid. Or even a person who is just tired like that.
I am somewhat surprised, for wasn't it Mrs. Roosevelt that helped him during the first few days of incapacitation?
Yes, but she is not the wife and mother that she was. She is now First Lady for the nation.
And I guess Mrs. Mercer doesn't bring as many new matters as Mrs. Roosevelt.
Maybe not the matters of state that Eleanor brings, but Lucy is new to widowhood, and she has so many problems and difficulties that she brings to him. She has no one else like him, no friend of such long standing to whom to go for the kind of sympathetic understanding which he always gives. Cannot blame her, but at the same time, I can't help but feel she should face her own life, not put so much of its difficulties on his shoulders. But then it has to be said, he is always happy when he feels he is helping others, making others happy. That's why he wants us to be there in San Francisco. He wants to share his happiness of a world working together with those dearest to him.
As the First Lady ever suspected you or any of his close female friends of being another Mrs. Mercer?
Only those who wish to find evil in my relationship with Franklin will find it. No, Eleanor wants me to be here. She knows what I can contribute to him, a complete lack of strain. You know, he told me once, there was no one else with whom he could be completely himself. Just relax.
Now, Franklin, why are we getting distracted with every country on Earth besides the one I called to discuss?
Winston
If we want Russian influence to be paramount in Yugoslavia, then we're going about it the right way.
But Winston was assured by Uncle Joe that Yugoslavia would be a 50-50 deal in peacetime.
Why? Are you just hoping that will be so? Why don't we back Winston's plan of combining concentrated British, Yugoslav, and Soviet forces on the Ljubljana Gap to push through to Austria?
Nearby administrations have informed us of a Yugoslav strategy. Whatever the Brits, Russians, and Yugoslavians decide, we will support. Not necessarily support. All we know is that dropping supplies from the skies would be ineffective.
There are consequences if we do nothing. Who do you have running your administration? It was bad enough to lose Wallace and others who share your ideals. But you didn't have to bring in apologists for Spanish fascists. I can hardly see how the setup of your State Department would be any different to a Republican administration under Dewey.
Even a son of a bitch isolationist like Dewey knows that we can no longer ignore the world. And yet his advisors have told him that any sort of action in the Balkans would be a great gamble. It's just not necessary.
I am very well aware of the reasons why certain things may be necessary. But a part of the world that has suffered 1.7 million deaths at the hands of the fascists should warrant our attention.
Where are these numbers coming from, Eleanor?
These young Yugoslavs told me.
Then that's Tito telling you.
Well, if he's wrong, what number do you have for me?
I don't have any for you without consulting our advisors, Eleanor.
Will you at least know the stories? the countless villages massacred by Nazis and Ustash, young partisans like Stefan Filipovich crying, "Death to fascism, freedom to the people," before being hanged in the town square to set an example to others.
I understand that they have suffered, Eleanor, but it's not like we have some magic button to squash all our problems with. Yet.
Now, Franklin, the details of what I can know are through you, and I should blindly trust what I can't know, and be neither worried nor scared.
But
yet I am both.
I understand, but this war is almost over. In Europe, a month maximum, and then Japan. I think these are goals worth sticking to. No more gambling like in Poland or Italy.
But what of our goals after? I thought we agreed these fringe issues could become bigger ones.
Uncle Joe is filling his fringes, and there is nothing that we can do about it. The Red Army is 50 miles from Berlin, Eleanor, but they've stopped to secure Budapest and Vienna in the meantime. Why give Tito further assistance to help achieve Joe's aims?
Franklin, I thought that you said helping Tito would be ineffective, not that he'd strengthen the aims of Moscow. Franklin,